The surging Giants win again. Another road win against a team bound for the playoffs, most likely, unless the Giants can upset them. Here's why it matters.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. And coming up on today's show, we are going to get into the Giants continuing to just dominate at the end of the season. It's nice to see, in my opinion. I think there are some people out there, hopefully not the majority, who don't want to see this team do well down the stretch. I mean, I'm going to get into why I disagree with that. I've seen a little bit of it on Twitter. I never really am one to believe that Twitter is like the where you go to find the popular opinion. I think it's where you find maybe people who are angry the most, if you're seeing a lot of that kind of stuff. But the reason it matters is, there are many reasons. For one, it could have consequences, and this might be a reason you actually legitimately would normally want the Giants to win, but would want them to lose in this case. And that is that as I keep saying, the San Francisco Chronicle reported that the Giants board of directors, this was a report from not long ago, this was on September 18th that I have this pasted in my notes, that the Chronicle said, quote, according to industry sources, the Giants board of directors, and it was written in the past tense, but I kept saying there's 12 more games. The Giants board of directors wanted, and I'm going to say wants, to assess how the season's final weeks played, but I'm going to say play out before making a decision on Farhan Zaidi and his future with the organization, whether or not they keep him or get rid of him. And so to me, it's a little bit hard to sit there and justify this is a point of contention, because I know some people do not agree with this, but it's going to be hard if they continue to play this way to go out there and be like, yeah, the guy who put this team together, you're fired. I get it. Ultimately, they're going to miss the playoffs. That is a fact. They are one game under 500. It's going to be disappointing no matter what. But if they can find a way to win tonight, let's just say, and they've got Logan Webb on the mound against Brandon Pfaadt, who, Logan Webb is the better pitcher here. Brandon Pfaadt is a good prospect, but Logan Webb is just better. And so, the Giants once again are in a position to win a game. Brandon Pfaadt, for what it's worth, 4.66 ERA. Expected ERA is just 3.70, and fielding independent pitching just 3.57. But Logan Webb, those are like worse than his numbers. So anyway, Brandon Pfaadt is a good young pitcher and was a highly regarded prospect. He graduated from Fangraphs as the 19th overall prospect in baseball in 2023. Has a very good slider, but he's 25 years old. Anyway, but if they can win today, they'd be back at 500 with a chance to at least finish at 500 with, even if they lose the series finale in Arizona and then just take a home series against the Cardinals, who have been overperforming frankly, for much of the season. Like if you look at their run differential, the Cardinals are a team the Giants should be able to win a home series against to end the year. And so, like, you may be sitting there thinking none of this matters. Like they're going to miss the playoffs. But to me, I've said, so it matters for three reasons. Number one, per the Chronicle, this is not just my opinion. It's not, I didn't even say it was my opinion, but per reports that are citing industry sources, again, the Giants board of directors wants to assess how the season's final weeks play out before making a decision on Zaidi. And in that piece, they write that, and it was a disaster. But I said, it's that you don't know. Like maybe they go, what did I say? 12-0, 11-1. And so far they are whatever and 1. I think they're like 6-1, 7-1, 3, 4, 5, 6-1, I believe, since that time. And so, yeah, because I said 12-0, and that would be 5 games left, and they do have 5 games left. And so, yeah, so now if they can go 4-1, 5-0, 4-1, or 3-2, I think then they put themselves in a position where they're 500 or better. I mean, imagine if they end up having this winning season. It's like people were talking about how, you know, one winning season. Even I was saying this, but this season is not over. And does it really matter if you're 82-80 versus 81-81 versus 79-83? Like, does it really matter? No. But does it matter in some ways? Yes. And especially with how you finish, because it would be a little bit odd to finish on a super hot streak and perhaps even have, you know, players that were signed by this regime or drafted and developed by this regime or traded for by this regime contributing to that success, which we've seen some of, like Hayden Birdsong last night, Matt Chapman, you know, and the board of directors obviously knows the real story behind the Matt Chapman extension, but conflicting reports. There was The Athletic reporting that basically they didn't trust Farhan Zaidi to get a deal done, an extension done, and they, you know, Buster Posey intervened. But then the very next day, the Chronicle said, not so fast. That's not actually really what happened. First of all, they said Zaidi was in and out of the hospital over the last couple weeks with an undisclosed ailment. And they said, and Scott Boras himself, the agent for Matt Chapman, completely disputed the story from The Athletic, just basically saying any reports. First of all, he said he wasn't contacted for the story. And if he was, he would have said something to this effect. But he said that any reports that indicate that this deal was not done by myself, Scott Boras, and Farhan Zaidi on the financials is just not true. So it sounds like Posey more so had a say maybe in kind of getting across the hurdle with the no trade protection that Chapman has. But anyway, they do extend Chapman, and then he's just gone on to play great after coming off the paternity list, and had an inside the park home run and a triple last night. The first Giant to have an inside the park and a triple in the same game since Monty Irvin in 1953. So, you know, Chapman and then his strong defense. So, you know, you look at the fact that they signed this guy, they extended this guy, perhaps according to the agent himself, Scott Boras, Zaidi certainly had a ton to do with the extension. Baggerly's reporting a little bit different. So I may sound like I'm advocating one way. I'm kind of just also, I like seeing the Giants win. I don't ever really, the one time I wanted them to lose was 2017 game 162, when a simple loss that meant absolutely nothing would have meant the number 1 overall pick versus the number 2 overall pick. But they did win on a Pablo Sandoval walk-off homer, and they got the number 2 overall pick, Joey Bart, and we all know how that panned out. But the number 1 overall pick hasn't panned out either, just for what it's worth. So anyway, coming up in just a minute, we'll get more into this game and kind of Hayden Birdsong, the young players that matter for the future of this team, and also doing damage to Arizona's playoff odds, just like they did to Kansas City's. So we'll get into the numbers behind that, playoff odds for Arizona and what they can do tonight in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, here we go. We are going to get into more of the specifics from this game. I did mention that Matt Chapman did something that hadn't been done since the 50s in this game. It was just a fun game all the way around, and players that matter for the future, doing damage to Arizona's playoff odds, and more. So thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be breaking down the second game of this series. The finale, it'll be the Giants' last road game of the year, is going to be, my internet is just failing me right now, but I believe it's usually a day game, in which case tomorrow's show will probably come out after the day game. But here we go. No, it's a night game. So we'll be doing a show before the game tomorrow, breaking down game 2 of this series, and then hopefully after the series talking to Millard from Locked On D-backs about the state of the race entering the final 3 games of the season. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So anyway, Matt Chapman, great game. He's just had a great season. I think it's worth pointing out that, to have this guy locked down, like, they got one of their huge off-season to-do items knocked out early. And he's just been on a tear. If you look at Baseball Reference, he's been the second most valuable player in the National League behind Shohei Ohtani. If you look at Fangraphs, he's going to be right up there as well. It's a little bit different because they evaluate defense differently. They use different defensive metrics on Baseball Reference and on Fangraphs. But yeah, if we look at National League players, Matt Chapman comes in 5th behind Ohtani, Lindor, Elly De La Cruz, Ketel Marte, and then there's Matt Chapman. So the combination of just doing a little bit of everything, and then the durability and the all-out hustle with which he plays every single day, in some ways reminds you of Hunter Pence with just the intensity and the one gear and all that. But also that Hunter Pence contract didn't age well, and so hopefully it doesn't end in the same kind of way where it's looking bad for the end, but it might, as a 6-year deal for a guy who's going to be 32 in April of year 1. And so anyway, though, I mean, this season he's having a great year, and certainly he helps them next year. There's just no doubt about it. But, it wasn't just Matt Chapman in this game. It was a lot of players who contributed to this 6-3 win. The bullpen, with Camilo Doval pitching a clean inning. He walked a batter, but 2 of the pitches he threw should have been strike 3. They were in the zone. Ryan Walker just continued to be shut down. And Hayden Birdsong kind of battled through a little bit of adversity, had a bit of a tough first inning, but got out of it and ended up going 5 and just allowing 2 runs on 4 hits, 2 walks with 6 strikeouts, no homers allowed. So he's whittled down that ERA little by little. And, I keep every day, it's like a new young, not new, but different young pitcher I'm talking about having a good performance lately. And for so much of this season, I was harping on how the pitching was what was leading to a lot of losses. They were just allowing too many runs. And so this was a game where they pitched pretty well, gave up only 3 runs, and they hit pretty well, getting 6 of their own. But if you look at the Kansas City series, they allowed just 1 run. And yes, you had Blake Snell in one of those starts, but it was otherwise 2 rookie pitchers who got their first wins in back-to-back days in Mason Black and Landen Roupp. So all of a sudden, like on this road trip, you're talking Mason Black, Landen Roupp, Hayden Birdsong, like throwing really good outings. And these are rookies. And so to see rookies, you also have Spencer Bivens throwing a scoreless inning. Eric Miller, his ERA on the season is 3.53. He did give up a run, but he struck out 2 in his inning. And on the offensive side, Elliot Ramos picked up a hit. Gerard, it's probably pronounced Gerard in Spanish. Encarnacion has been a very interesting player. He's really hit. The guy can hit a little bit. I think there's no doubt about that. And so he's interesting kind of to see what happens with him in the future. Michael Conforto, good for him. I don't think he factors into the future much for the Giants. I doubt they bring him back, but having a nice solid end of the season, picked up a couple hits, including a booming home run. Giants hit a lot of homers there. And, Matt Chapman, Casey Schmidt, and Michael Conforto went yard. Chapman hit a triple. Encarnacion and Conforto hit doubles. And Tyler Fitzgerald has been slumping. So that is one thing to point out. Like when we're looking towards the future, he was 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. He's kind of been in one of those funks. And Casey Schmidt had a good game. He drew a walk and hit a booming rocket home run. Grant McCray 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. But the defense has been impressive. And the arm, I looked him up just yesterday on Baseball Savant. And his speed and arm are basically like 100th percentile, like 99th percentile. He's among the fastest players in the game, and he's got one of the best arms in the game. And so that's going to translate, I think, to just potentially elite defense in center field. And anything he can give you with the bat is just a little bit gravy. And he showed power. It's like he strikes out a lot, but he also does, he's dangerous at the plate. And so, that was a good, pretty good. I mean, this wasn't a good game, but McCray has overall been impressive, I would say, on the whole, even though the strikeout numbers are really high and all that. You can live with that if you're getting like that kind of athleticism, and you just kind of hope that he grows into being a better hitter. And so anyway, these are among the numerous reasons why I do think that these last 5 games of the season matter, why I do think this really hot road trip matters, because I mean, it could really make the difference. If they had really struggled on this trip, it would be hard to justify keeping Farhan Zaidi. And you might think it shouldn't matter, but I just think at the end of the day, your final record does matter, and it doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter if it's consistent or like really hot at the end or really hot at the beginning. It's all about like wins and losses when all is said and done. And their record is exactly where it should be based on run differential. They've been outscored by a whopping 4 runs on the season. And so when you've played an odd number of games, that means your predicted record is going to be that you've lost 1 more game than you've won. And that's exactly where they are. It's 78 and 79. They're 9 games back. It does just so happen to be a year when the wild card teams are all going to win probably 90 plus games. Maybe not, maybe like 89 for one of them, but still it happens to be a year where like kind of low to mid 80s is not nearly good enough. And so that is unfortunate. Although the Giants won't get to the mid 80s, even if they win their next 5, they'll just win 83. That's the most they can win. They're going to win between 78 and 83 games when all is said and done. And so, yeah, they still will have to take a hard look at Farhan Zaidi, but at the same time, when it's just the optics of it, if you finish really strong, and again, I'm going to say there's still 5 more games. They could go 0-5, and then it could change your thinking. And maybe that's a foolish way to look at it, but I'm just citing the Chronicles saying the board of directors wants to see how the season plays out. before making a decision. And if all of a sudden a lot of your players, Snell, the way that he's pitched, they signed, Farhan Zaidi went out and got Blake Snell. If you could extend Blake Snell somehow right now, if you're Zaidi, you're kind of fighting for your life, and you can make a Snell deal happen, then maybe that cements that you get at least another year. I don't know. So I'm with the Chronicle. I'm waiting to see how the season finishes before ultimately making a conclusion about the season. Go figure. That seems kind of obvious, but that's where we're at. And so the last part of all this is disrupting other teams. The Giants did that with the Kansas City Royals, whose playoff odds fell from like 90% to like 67% after the Giants swept them. And so last night, the Giants beating the D-backs, it did something to Arizona's playoff odds as well. So we'll get into the state of the race in the National League and how the Giants are having, and in the American League, and how the Giants are having an effect on it. We'll get into that in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. With hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival's city during the postseason. Or, because we all know, LA is going to be going, but San Diego is probably like almost certainly going to be going. And then there's, playoffs all over. And so if you're in those areas or you just want to explore and experience some postseason baseball like me, which I will be doing, Booking.com is the perfect place to go. Booking.com delivers exactly the right U.S. stay for you. Booking.com can help you book a stay that's close to your home team's or rival's stadium. No matter what team you're rooting for this postseason, Booking.com can make you a fan of any U.S. city. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts to cute bed and breakfast stays, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's it. And so heading over to FanDuel.com myself right now, I'm looking at the upcoming odds tonight. This game, by the time you're listening, probably has gotten underway, but the Giants obviously in Arizona, underdogs again, even with Logan Webb on the mound. I don't know how I feel about that. And the over-under pretty high at 8.5. So the over-under at 8.5 with plus 102 odds and the money line at plus 128. I don't know. The way the Giants are playing, the way it's Logan Webb, with the over-under, I might be kind of leaning Giants and the under on both of those. So anyway, again, that's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, as promised, we're going to give you an update on the state of the races in the National League and the American League and how the Giants have had a real effect on it. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers tomorrow breaking down this game with Logan Webb on the mound against Brandon Pfaadt. And it's a big one for Arizona because their playoff odds, according to Fangraphs, fell from, let's see, let me give you the precise number. Well, none of this should ever be considered precise, but 82.7 entering the game. And it fell to 79.2 with the loss. So that's 72.9. Is that what I said? Yeah. So a 10-point decline in one game. I mean, that's a big deal for that team. For a team that has playoff aspirations, that is a big deal. And so the teams that they're looking out for, the Braves, the Mets, those two teams are playing each other right now. At the time of this recording, it's 5-0 Braves, which is actually not what the D-backs want to see, because the Braves are the team that's right behind them, but the Mets are also tied with them. So it's kind of like a win-win in a way, because somebody's going to lose. I think if you're the D-backs, you just hope for a sweep one way or the other, probably a sweep by the Mets, so the Braves just fall out. But right now the Braves are winning. And so the Braves, if they can hold on, that's going to decrease Arizona's playoff odds. And then if the Giants can win, if the Braves can hold on, and if the Giants can win tonight, the D-backs would have just a half game lead over the Braves for a playoff spot. And the Mets would have just a 1 game lead over the Braves. So it's going to get crazy potentially if the Braves can hold on and win this, and then depending on what the Giants do. And so that all remains to be determined tonight, like if the Braves can hold on and if the Giants win. Because if it goes the other way, if Arizona wins, like it makes a huge difference, and you'll see a major swing in Arizona's chances of making it. And I don't know if it's still possible for them to clinch in this series if the Braves win tonight. So if the Braves win tonight, and they're up 5-0 again, and the Diamondbacks win, they'll still have just a 1.5 game lead with 4 to play, which would mean the best Arizona could be is 2.5 up with 3 to play. So they wouldn't be able to clinch. And so if the Braves win, the Giants won't have to witness Arizona clinching against them. So that would be good. But hopefully the Giants can just continue to win and really upset some teams. And so checking in on the Royals, they're playing the Washington Nationals right now, and that game is 0-0 in the 6th. And the teams they're watching are Detroit, who won already today, and Seattle is kind of on their tails, and then Minnesota, which, that team is just collapsing right now. And so, yeah, I mean, the Giants have had a significant impact on this race. The Twins, though, the way they're falling apart has kind of given Kansas City some breathing room. But anyway, I just love it. As a competitor, I love to see my team, if you're not going to be in it yourself, to at least cause some disruption. And they're saying that themselves. If you read the quotes after the game, if you watch the post-game show and watch the interviews, I haven't actually heard Bob Melvin say this, but some of the players say this, like they want to upset some teams. They want to break some hearts. They want to get in there and mess some people's, just kind of ruin some teams, break their hearts is kind of the best way to put it. And as a competitor, that's what it's all about. I mean, you're doing it because you're not just going to cave. Like if you don't try to beat them, they're going to try to beat you. You better believe it. And they want to celebrate, and you're going to have to sit there and watch it. And so, it gets my competitive juices flowing to think about this, even though the Giants are out of it. So I do just want to emphasize the Giants being eliminated this season is a huge disappointment. Expectations were that they would be in the race, and their odds, if you look at Fangraphs, were basically 0 entering the month of September. So basically a month of meaningless baseball when it comes to making the postseason. But at the same time, it's inspiring and enjoyable to watch the way that they're playing right now. And especially if they can cause some damage. Like if the Royals and the D-backs end up, if the Giants do well in this series, we'll see how the next 2 games go. And let's say the Royals and the D-backs miss the playoffs by the slimmest of margins, you can look back and say, hey, that last week of the season, we ruined those teams. We went in there and we made a difference in this race. And so that's what you're playing for right now. You're also playing for, as I said yesterday, as a competitor and professional pride, I think you're playing for being 500 or better, preferably better, but not having a losing season. And so they're 1 game under 500. Today's game, I think, will obviously go a long way towards determining, do they end up with a losing record? It's all in play. I mean, you could have, I think Fangraphs is predicting 80.5 wins. So that would be obviously half the time in the projections they're 500 or better, and half the time they're 500 or less than 500. So anyway, That is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers tomorrow, Logan Webb versus Brandon Pfaadt, with the Giants playing for some things. The D-backs definitely playing for some things, and let's see if the Giants can keep it going. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance. And thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening today. I'm not sure I mentioned, I put it on Twitter, but I had major malfunction of my heating and cooling system, and it had to get worked on, and that is why this episode is coming out so late. I really meant to mention that in the beginning, but I'm just mentioning it now. But anyway, that may be getting worked on tomorrow, but hopefully not all day like it was today. So thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.